Hey, welcome to the Rev Up, the podcast where we talk about all things revenue growth. I'm your host, Ben Shipley, Chief Growth Officer here at Trust the Process. The Rev Up is in fact brought to you by Trust the Process, the place to go when you need help to find offshore team members for anything from sales and marketing through to general admin, operations, tech help, offshore team members through Trust the Process. Also, if you need help in implementing and integrating technology, things like CRM systems, in particular HubSpot and ActiveCampaign, you can reach out to us at ttprocess.co. Plenty of places on the website there to opt in and book in to have a conversation. Today on the show, I'm very excited. I've actually got one of our internal team members on the show, Anna Espina. Anna is essentially our marketing manager here at Trust the Process, but is also an entrepreneur herself. Anna's spent 10 plus years working for brands and companies around Europe, Australia, South America. She's also the founder of her own marketing agency. But obviously also happens to be the marketing manager at Trust the Process. In her experience, she's helped small businesses really focus on being mindful through how they sell and market. She has created digital transformation strategies for companies, with a really sort of sustainable and ethical value to them and approach. Or what she talks about regularly being marketing for good. She's also very much a mental health and women's empowerment advocate. You can see this in the content she produces for herself and her own businesses, particularly on LinkedIn. But really importantly for this conversation, Anna is essentially the person that I've been partnering with for the last 7 or 8 months in order to sort of transform the way we do marketing at Trust the Process. Has been instrumental in how we have built our own content marketing strategy, the results that we're getting from that content marketing strategy, and also instrumental in how we have now essentially created a content as a service product where we can essentially replicate the things that we do for ourselves, things like this podcast, videos, social posts, email, etc., and replicate those for clients through a content as a service product. So very excited to have Anna on the show today. Over to us, I suppose, in the studio. Welcome to the Rev Up, the one and only Anna. How are you doing, Anna?
Hey, Ben. I'm really good, thank you. I'm really excited to be here today.
That's good to hear. We obviously work together. I've done a little bit of a bio in the intro to the show, and we have been working together for the last maybe 9 months, 8 months, something like that. 9 months now.
Yeah. That's it.
We kind of came together. We both got sort of thrown into the fire of trying to reorganize and strategize for marketing. You moved over. You were already at Trust the Process when I joined, but moved into the marketing team just as I came into the business, and we kind of had to figure it out as we went along. And what are your sort of memories and the experience of that time kind of coming together early on?
I heard someone was coming to the marketing team, the head of growth, chief officer, and I was like, "Ooh, that sounds interesting." I just thought that we started from a place that things were good, but there was a lot of things that we could do better. And I was very excited for you coming into the Trust Process, and I thought it's a good moment for me to switch because I think we can do some interesting strategy for this company, and I'm sure that the results are going to appear quite soon. And it was fun. Like, it was maybe a bit stressful at the beginning because obviously you never know. It's a new team. You don't know how it's going to work at the beginning. There's ways of working that are different, so that can really make your life very different. I was literally posting on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago about how a manager can change your life into the positive side or into the bad side of of life, let's say. So I thought it was a good
Yeah.
a good match, let's say, professional match, and I think we're doing, I don't know, great together, and looks
Yeah.
like we're doing like really cool stuff
Yes.
for Trust the Process, and really happy for the change.
Yeah, me too. And you and I talk quite a bit about like the culture of TTP. I think it was interesting when we kind of came together in this world of marketing for Trust the Process. We seem to have similar ideas about like what a good working culture was. What was it that sort of drew you into, wanting to go on this journey with Trust the Process?
I was in a moment of like, I quit my, let's say, office job in a big corporate company a couple of years ago, and I was freelancing for 2 years before entering Trust the Process. And I just felt like the company had exactly the values that I was looking for, because I'm also building my own business on the side. And the fact that they are so flexible, culture is like, it's amazing. Like everyone is respected. I've never felt like so much respect from my bosses like in the past. It's been an amazing journey. I love how the team, we all respect each other and we treat each other on the same level. It doesn't matter if you're this co-founder, I don't know, one of the outsourcing teams, like everyone has a voice, and that's something that I really, really like from Trust the Process. And I can say that my voice is being listened. So I'm happy about that. And I think that it's something that I'm also like integrating in my other projects. But I think that also you can see that the clients kind of get that type of values. They get these values and they incorporate them in their companies. And that's very, very, very nice to see in a company.
Yeah, did you have any thoughts about like, I know Matt and Pete are both former military officers, both out of the army. It wasn't a thing that really they talked about a lot when you and I joined, but I know we both kind of knew that we were going into a business that was run by a couple of former military officers. Did you have any feelings or thoughts about that on the way in?
Yeah, definitely. So, as you know me, I'm all peace and love. I'm a very peaceful person. I love to meditate, do yoga, all that stuff. So at the beginning, I was a bit scared, like, let's see what is this and how this resonates with me. But it was incredible how much easier things when you implement like the military mindset on a business. I think that the beginning can be something that it's unknown, scary. You might feel unsure about what's the outcome of implementing this style of management in a company, but definitely I think it made such a difference for me. And at the end of the day, what I'm seeing is that I'm also implementing this mindset further than Trust the Process, let's say. And it's really good because what I feel is like in the past, maybe in other, companies that I work for, it was very like layers of like, this is your role, this is what you have to do, and you cannot move from that. And that was very frustrating for me because I'm a very creative, I consider myself a creative person, so that was very frustrating because there was no way of like learning from other things. While now on the opposite, right, we can do a little bit of everything. So for me, these values in the company make such a difference because in the past, for me, was working especially in big corporates, you have a very clear role and you cannot move from that role, right? But there's no much of options of expand your creativity or like, be proactive and like give your feedback or be a bit more of like out of what you are meant to do. And here it's quite of the opposite. Like you have your role very clear, but you can be creative. You can be, potentially like suggest things that are listened. And also like at the end of the day, I think it's very good for the team because everyone has the very clear what we have to do, right, on our, let's say, roles. But at the same time, like we help each other. It's like a community. Like I cannot get to do this, someone else is going to help me. And that really, like at the end of the day, it's really nice to work in a company like this because it feels very, very like a family almost.
Yeah. Yeah, and like there's I think there's a lot of freedom in some of those military sort of principles, particularly around delegation. Like, nobody's got the time to be on top of absolutely everything when you're in a military environment. You have a clear role, you have a clear set of objectives, and you need to go and get your job done. And I think that's there's actually a lot of freedom in that when that's utilized properly in a business. You know, this is what we need from you. Time to go and get it done. You can figure out a little bit of like how to get there and all that sort of stuff. But I suppose I've found that stuff particularly helpful,
Me
particularly
too.
interesting. One of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on the show today is because obviously we've gone through a pretty seismic shift in how we go about marketing in Trust the Process. We really now think of it in kind of two pieces. One being how we sort of build our audience, how we create demand, and the second part being how we capture that demand and how we drive pipeline. I know you're somebody who, in our team meetings and in our conversations, in our workshops, strategizing to figure out what we're going to do, you're somebody who has talked quite a bit about the importance of some of these elements, particularly around content, particularly around community building and audience building, that aren't necessarily just things that you can measure with like a lead and ROI outcome. Talk to me a little bit about your approach to demand creation, whether it be here at Trust the Process or generally. Are there things you kind of believe are important when it comes to building content and building audience and those sorts of things?
Yeah, definitely. For me, when we started the Trust the Process, it was very important to have like a base, like you're building a house. That base was not very clear for me at the moment. And so it's important to know what is the audience you're addressing, right? Because it really depends of the audience, what's the strategy that you're going to take. So you have to have a clear buyer persona or avatar. It's another way of saying. That means it's basically a semi-fictional character that you put as one of your targets, but it goes deeper than only the social demographics. This person have pains, gains, have more like it's more like you can envision this person with a name, and so that helps a lot to then. When I'm talking to this, for example, Joe, I'm talking to Joe, I know what I have to say to Joe. Or I'm talking to Sally, I know what I have to say to Sally. They are different target personas. That's very important to have clear when you start any content, because definitely the messages that you're going to address are going to be different. Also important is the tone of voice that you have as a brand, right? And what these people likes, right? Like, we also did a bit of a rebranding of the website because we wanted to maybe be more transparent, more modern, more aligned with what the buyer persona, these targets that we're mentioning, we're looking for. So that base must be like, you must nail that before starting the content. Obviously,
That was one of the first
evolve.
things we did, right?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the first project we did together. And this can evolve, like maybe sometimes you will see that some messaging work better than others, and that's like pretty much optimizing the campaigns and optimizing how you talk to the target. But definitely without that base, it's very difficult to do a winning strategy or a winning marketing for a business.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was something we aligned on very early, that we needed to get really clear about who our customer was, and ultimately there are the two sides to it. There's the demographic side. We believed that we needed to focus a little bit more on a slightly larger business size, and so we essentially built out an avatar for larger business. We were already very focused on the small end of the SME world, and needed to have a little bit more focus on the medium end of the SME world. And so there's the demographics of like, what size business are they? Where are they? What industries are they in? How many employees do they have? How much revenue are they generating? All of those things. What's the job titles of the people we want to talk to? but there's also the psychographics elements, right? There's the emotional impacts elements, and so we obviously did a lot of work around, what are the towards and away from motivators for all of these people. How do you find having that? Because you are ultimately the one who brings all of what we do from a content perspective together, right? How do you how useful do you find it, and how important do you find it to have that, really clear understanding from the get-go around like what motivates our customers to take action, whether it be things they're trying to get away from, things they're scared of, problems they have, or where they're trying to go, the solutions and those sorts of things.
That's a really good question. For me, it's important to do that part because when we are in marketing, we have to remember that we're trying to solve a problem, not selling a product or a service. So we need to focus on what's the problem of the customer to understand how are we going to sell that product or service. If I have a beautiful phone and I can know like the qualities of the phone, right? Like what's the camera, I don't know, what's the quality of the pixels and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But if I cannot understand or I cannot create emotions behind that phone, it's just going to be like another phone, right? So that's why especially on the last years in marketing, you can see like ads being focused on emotions, the insights of the customer, rather than what's the product selling. And for me, we use that literally in the most minimum message, like let's say a post on LinkedIn, to the biggest campaign that could be, for example, a TV advertisement. You cannot forget the problem that you're trying to solve, because if you're just focusing on what am I, that's my product, I'm amazing, the customer is going to be like, no, you're just another one, right? And you're not differentiating yourself. But when you're understanding what's the problem of that customer and you're like, oh, I understand you, I'm here for you, I can solve your problem. How? Doing this. Then it's when the customer clicks to you and you're like, oh, so these guys are actually caring about me and they are saying things differently to me. I'm very active in LinkedIn like you are, and like, many probably of the people listening today are. And I literally receive tons and tons of messages of people selling me stuff. And it's not many that I answer because, most of them are very generic, like, oh, I'm another, I don't know, marketing, blah, blah, blah. I can sell you this, I can sell you that. Sometimes they don't even like realize that you're selling the same stuff than them. That's the most crazy part to me. Like sometimes people come to me selling stuff that we sell. So it's just like, check my profile twice because I'm not the right target, right? But not only that, but also make things a bit different, right? Like make that message different and, notorious and impactful so that actually that person is going to connect with you. If you're just going to say the same as the rest, you're going to disappear in the huge market of, advertisement, because right now there's so many people saying things that it really makes a difference on how you say it. And that's why content marketing is so important right now, because you can really go to the target that you have, very, very segmented on social media. But if you're saying things that are not interesting to them, like you're literally wasting your money.
Yeah. Right. I think this is an important conversation to have because, essentially what you and I shifted Trust the Process's strategy to is a very content audience build based strategy, right? If you're going to build an audience and if you are going to engage with that audience, teach that audience in order to essentially be able to build your marketing strategy, you have to have the content to feed it, right? And a content marketing strategy is a very, very hungry animal. So you have to have a way to be able to constantly make more content. You and I set out with a pretty audacious goal of, well, actually, initially we said, let's make one big thing a month. And then we almost immediately decided we were going to make something every week. What's that been like? What have you found to be the important things in going through that process of going from, almost no content marketing to a very content-heavy, content-focused marketing strategy? What have been the big learnings?
So for me, one very important lesson has been the reporting. It's very, very important to have dashboards in place and understanding your data. That means that, if you have a big content marketing strategy, you really need to understand where your customers are coming from, where's your traffic coming from, and understand where do you have to put the money. You have to put the money in the right place, right? Sometimes we just have, a big budget and we just want to do everything. Or sometimes we have a small budget and we just can't do one thing. So it's important to understand, okay, where are my customers coming from? And then put that money where they are coming from. So
Yeah.
you can actually, you don't waste your money in things that are not working. A lot of
people will say like content marketing is really hard to measure, and I know one of the things that we had to change, and this is this is not necessarily a new approach. If anything, this is maybe an old approach. Is we had to shift to a model called self-reported attribution, in large part because if you're going to, we run this podcast. If you're going to generate leads from a podcast, you have to have a way to capture when people are coming to you from the podcast. That project, I think we both talk fairly regularly about the fact that having much clearer data on where our leads heard of us and where they're actually coming from has made a big difference to us. Is that kind of what you're talking about there, being able to measure what's happening, even if it didn't come through a perfect digital path, they clicked on Google AdWords or something like that?
Yes, that's correct. And sometimes platforms like HubSpot, as we use, help a lot in understanding all this customer journey. Understanding where these people comes from, where they clicked, understanding if the social media content that we're creating is actually bringing traffic. Is it quality traffic? Is this traffic actually converting? Not. So all these details that you can understand from a platform, a CRM platform, are really, really important to understand basically how your strategy is going to be. And we saw that there was a big potential in our social media / content strategy, and that's why we are putting efforts in this. And so far, it's going well, and it's bringing the results that we expected. So that's great news.
Yeah, and that ability to track it is kind of about splitting out those two pieces, right? Like there is where did somebody hear about us, and there's what's the path did they follow in order to get to us. And I use this example all the time. If somebody goes to a business networking event and your business is presenting at that networking event, and they go, oh, hey, I'd like to go and talk to Anna. And so they go home and they Google Trust the Process, and they find Trust the Process, and they click on the link, and they go through to the website and they fill in the form, and you speak to them. If you just use digital channels, digital tracking in order to figure out where that person came from, you will see that they came as an organic search lead. Mm-hmm. And you might go and spend a whole bunch of money on SEO instead of a whole bunch of money on going to more events and speaking at more events, right? Yeah. And so we very much had to split out between those two things. What's the path they took to get to us is really important from a demand capture perspective. How are they finding us, and is it efficient, and is it easy, and is it effective? But also, how did they hear about us in the first place? Why have they come to talk to us in the first place? And I think it's been really positive to see even from quite early on, that we are already generating revenue from the podcast,
That's
which is
right.
very exciting to see.
Very, very exciting.
And then what else? What other big lessons have there been?
Well, and second lesson would be you really need to have a team in place, because having a content strategy, it's not something that from one day to another maybe it's going to bring results, but it takes time and it takes a team to make that happen. That means that, I'm the marketing manager now at Trust the Process, but that I have a team of a copywriter, a graphic designer, a website developer, podcast producer. Like, we have a team of people that each of them are doing such an amazing work in their different areas of expertise. But if one of these pieces is missing, the result is not going to be the same. So it's important to have, a strong team behind the content strategy. It really depends on what's your strategy. It doesn't need 5 people. Maybe it can be 3, can be 5, can be 7. It really depends on your budget, obviously, and also on like what are your expectations from this. But I think that now we have a very, very good team in place, and it's like it's been also a journey, because obviously it's a new team, so that's a lot of learnings in a short term.
Yeah.
But if the structure is well, and the data is in place, and you understand everything that you have to do, then things are smooth.
Yeah, and we obviously had to work through that building of the team piece, and you and I filling in the gaps while we didn't have the people. So originally, at the very first, when we first started doing this, it was essentially me and you, and then it was me, you, and a graphic designer, and then me, you, a graphic designer, and a video editor, who is now also our podcast producer. And
Correct.
then we eventually added on copying and editing as well. And I think like the big lesson from all of that I really hope for all of our listeners they can just jump to the end and avoid is 2 things. Actually, there's 2 big lessons. One is like there's so much specialization in marketing. If you want to do a really good job of something and you don't have the time to do it all on your own, hiring professionals to do each of those individual pieces, each of those specialized individual skills is massively helpful. That's really hard for a lot of people because, not everybody is Trust the Process who happens to be an offshoring company who can hire people in the Philippines directly for themselves to do a lot of these roles. But those areas of specialization, I think, have made a huge difference in the quality of the content that we're putting out. Ken, our graphic designer, does an amazing job with our graphics and our images and our text overlays and all of the bits and pieces that he does. Leanie does an amazing job with editing the videos. We've got a whole team behind this that all do those individual pieces, and I think that's made a massive difference to how that all comes together. Everybody being able to play their core role in that. I think the other big lesson out of all of that is that it actually takes quite a big team to build a content engine. It's not because we're an outsourcing business, I talk to businesses all the time that are trying to offshore roles for marketing and looking for a unicorn. They're looking for one person that can do 15 things in marketing.
Impossible.
And then not getting particularly good results when they try and do it that way. And so we obviously always try and point people in the opposite direction of that, try and specialize.
Definitely.
But that's been a big lesson, I think, for us, is that trying to do it with one person will yield certainly a cheaper but a much more stressful and worse result. Trying to do it with the people that are required for each of the pieces means you get a good result, you get it faster, and you get it much more efficiently.
100%. I would like to add a couple of things here. One thing is that the fact that you can find such a like specialized teams is very, very good. Me, from my experience, I've been working in marketing for 10 years and I've been a freelancer for like 5. And in those 5 years, I learned from many areas of expertise: SEO, SEM, copywriting, even design, creating websites. But no one's going to do it better than someone that is specialized on that specific role, because they know way more than what I know. Maybe a manager would be a nicer, person that have maybe a more like knowledge of different areas, so that from a, let's say, vision perspective, it's easier to control and understand what's happening within the content engine. But if you need a strategy behind it, you really need those people that are specialized, because no one's going to do better job of designing something than a graphic designer, and no one's going to do better job of SEO as an SEO specialist, and like this with any other example in marketing. And that's something that you can see, like companies have either the marketing engines inside of the company, or as a provider in a marketing agency, but it's never one person. It's always a big team.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. There's actually been I think there's quite a lot of stuff that needs to come together in order for a content marketing strategy to work. We've talked about avatars, we've talked about brand and style guidelines, we've talked about making content, having the team, being able to report on the results. All of those pieces are super important. Is there anything else that you need? I mean, we've done so many things, but what else do you think is like the most important things that you have to make sure you've got right in order for your content strategy to work?
So for me, it's understanding what's working and what is not. And that means both the data, understanding your data, and also having a creative team that can support you and make that happen. If you have those two things clear, and then I think you're ready to go and start knocking on people's doors, or appearing into their Instagram feed or whatever it is. But if you don't have that clear, definitely it's not yet your time, because I think you're going to spend money, with a vision, with those strategies. So it's going to be money not well spent, and you maybe think, oh, I'm frustrated because marketing is not working for me. Well, marketing has been working for years and years for many companies. It's just right how you do it. And for me, the most important things are definitely creativity, and second, that data in place. Something that we haven't chat much about, but for example, now we are also implementing AI in our team in some areas, like in the podcast, in copywriting. But at the end of the day, you always need a person to double check everything and make sure that things make sense, right?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Utilizing technology is so critical. Like, there's lots of businesses out there that just do it the hard manual way. And as these new solutions and new technologies come into play, it's important to test them out and integrate the ones that work and kick out the ones that don't. We talked at the start of this conversation about, and also in the middle of it, about the difference between demand creation and demand capture. I think the other thing that we've done really well as a team is the transition of the website. You can have if you have an amazing demand creation strategy, you're producing amazing content. Maybe it's a vlog, maybe it's a podcast, whatever it is, you're producing this amazing content, super engaging, everybody loves it. But then they can't figure out how to get in contact with you. Then demand creation is relatively pointless if you have no way of capturing that demand. talk to me a little bit about the approach we've had to rebuilding the website and rebuilding how we capture demand across our various channels.
Yes. So when I first got into the website of Trust the Process, I thought it was not very trustful. And that made me thinking, because then, you see the team and everything, and everything is really, really well structured, and it's an amazing team, and, the people are super professional. And I thought that's sad, because I think we can do things better, right? And to be honest, we kept the naming, we kept the colors, we kept the essence of Trust the Process, but we changed it in a way that is more, let's say, modern, and it's more for this century, let's say. We focused a lot on creating lead magnets and call to actions, and making sure that anyone that comes to our website can, either book a demo with us, or contact to a salesperson, or get some content that is interesting for them. We have many call to actions that are not only contact us, right? There's many call to actions on the website as well, or even content for free, that it helps the customers to understand better what we do, and free tools to understand, maybe how they can improve their own businesses through technology and outsourcing. And even this podcast, it's a tool for people, for business owners that are just maybe a little bit overwhelmed with all these, technology things, and they're still doing things manually, or maybe they think that they cannot afford a team, or that they don't delegate, right? All these things that can happen to a business owner. We are trying to understand them and offer them those things for free. And obviously, other things that are more working with us, then they can talk with the sales team. But I think that that was a big change maker, because we already saw when we changed the lead magnets and the call to actions and all the ways that people could connect with us, and also obviously the look and feel of the website that was way more transparent, even with videos of the team members that we have. It made things more smooth, and I think that people could understand what was actually behind Trust the Process. And before, maybe that wasn't the case. And I think now if you go to our website, it's pretty clear what we do, right? We help businesses through technology and outsourcing to make, to grow and make their businesses more efficient, and to actually, some of them don't have to be 24/7 working for their business, but also enjoying their lives, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would say just about every business has some level of website shame. It's funny how often you talk to businesses, whether it be their leaders or their owners, and you say, "Oh, I jumped on your website," and they say, "Oh, yeah, it's a work in progress. I'm sorry." And I think that the funny thing about websites is that they are always a work in progress. It's not a static, completed project. Even, what was it, maybe 2 or 3 working days ago, you and I were talking about the conversion rates of the different wording on our CTAs, and essentially shifting most of them to be a different wording, because we had found that that the more product-specific book a demo type CTAs were actually much more effective than the speak to an expert, talk to a salesperson type ones.
That's correct.
And, and so I think it's important for everyone to be your website's not a project you complete and then it sits there. Your website is something that you should be constantly working on, particularly in terms of how it converts, and how effective it is at converting people and moving them along their buying journey.
100%. And for me, that website point that you made is really, really accurate. It's just you have to think that a website at the end of the day is your presentation to the world, right? In the digital, let's say, environment. But in technology, everything evolves super fast. You don't have the first iPod that was, on the market, I don't know, 10 years ago. You have the latest one, because there's so many things that change that like you also have to change with them. And the fact that a website, you know, people that the old Google, let's say maybe 20 years ago, you could use a website and have some traffic for free. Now you really need to have people working behind on that back end of your website to actually have traffic, not only through ads, but also, you know, through SEO, meta descriptions, technical stuff, reducing the image size, all of that stuff make your website be more visible or not. So it's really important to understand that it's okay if it's a work in progress, but it has to be a work in progress that it's progressing in a positive way, let's say. But yeah, there's been many learnings also on this project for sure.
I think it's important to acknowledge for any listeners of this podcast that you know, we are quite lucky here at Trust the Process because we are an offshoring business, and we are I suppose, a digital transformation business as well, a consultancy. A lot of these things that we're talking about, these are things that we have access to. You know, these are actually like the products that we sell. And so it is sometimes a little bit easier for us to maybe do some of these things than the average person. But I would say like probably the big core pieces, if you're just talking in terms of what do you need to get started, maybe you and I just go back and forth here a little bit. Let's see if we leave any out, right? So like, I think website is really critical. You have to have a great way to capture demand. You have to have a good website that has a great user experience, that has really good CTAs, that has really good content. That's probably number one. What else do you think is important? We'll just go one for one. You go one, then I'll go one, all right?
I'll say,
like a draft.
obviously what we've been talking, that it's content. Content is king, they say. You really have to have interesting content that people clicks so that they can get into your website, and then they can definitely decide if they want to book or not with you. But if they don't do that first step of clicking to your website, then that person is not going to engage with you.
Nice. I would say the next one is a CRM. If you don't have somewhere for all of these leads and this pipeline to flow into that you can manage well, that you can then effectively re-engage, nurture, hand over to your sales team, convert within a platform and measure your success, then you're going to find it very difficult to execute as well.
Great. I would say as well, and a specialized team.
Nice.
If you don't have the people that are necessary to make this happen, you can be the smartest person of the world, but if you don't know how to do it, it's not going to work. So having a team that supports you, right, and can help you with this path of, you know, marketing, strategy, sales, how to have all of this in place. Even like, I don't know, booking meetings if you're super busy, right? Anything. It's important to have the team that you need for your business in place to make sure that everything is smooth and it works perfect.
Yep. Definitely agree. I would say, if anything, I would probably choose that over just about everything else. Makes the biggest difference for me, for sure. I've got one more. Have you got one more?
Not sure. Let me think. You go.
My one more is you have to have something to say, right? If you're going to do good content marketing, you do have to have something to say. And I know this is an area that scares a lot of people when thinking about going down a content marketing path, because you do have to have enough things to say about enough different things that you can consistently create content, because just rehashing and reusing the same content over and over again is not going to build much of an audience. But what I would say to most people that are out there thinking, can I even do this, is that if you have some expertise in your industry, if you know your customers well, if you know your solutions well, if you understand technically what's happening within the market and how to solve problems, you probably have a lot more to say than you think you do.
Yeah.
Right? Which is why sometimes the best way to do content is through interviews. And so this was a thing that I was worried about in starting this process, right? And here we are today doing an interview, right? And mostly on this show, I interview people. But sometimes you just need that other person on the other side of the content in order to have a discussion and in order to be able to extract it out. So that would be the last thing for me is, you got to have something to say, but you probably have more to say than you think you do. And if you're struggling with it, you might just need somebody that can help you draw it out.
Definitely. I love that one. And like, as I said before, like sometimes we tend to focus a lot on the product and the service, but most of the time is about the feeling that our product or service is making our potential customers feel. And we cannot forget that, because sometimes we focus too much on, the key points of what will sell, but actually what we have to think is about like, what problem am I solving?
100%. Yep. Always focused on that higher thought of like, how am I actually helping someone? How can I help people? What problem do we solve? Who do we serve? All that stuff. I think that's super critical. This has been an awesome conversation. I have one more question for you, which I ask everybody that comes on this show, which I ask everybody that comes on this show because you listen to every one of these shows. So I want to hear from you, either the book or the podcast or the mentor. Who's had the biggest impact on your learning when it comes to developing your skills in your career?
Well, that's a wonderful question. I love that question. I've been thinking about it because it's not only one person, right? In my case, I come from a family of marketing and entrepreneurship. So I guess that made myself the adult that I am today, right? And impacted a lot on my childhood. And, I loved watching ads when I was a kid, and while other kids were watching cartoons and stuff like that. So probably, my family circle, let's say. But lately, I've been watching a lot. I've been listening a lot to Stephen Bartlett. That is one of the Shark Tanks in the UK.
CEO.
Yeah, he's 30 years old, so he's a young guy. I can, relate myself to him, although I don't have as much money. No, jokes apart. So I really like Stephen Bartlett because, it really shows like also the struggles of very important business people, right? Or even like actors, actresses, like journalists, like a lot of variety of people that are successful in their businesses or in their careers, but also showing the struggles. So that helps a lot of, coping with that, maybe imposter syndrome, or like that fact of like, my God, it's so hard. Sometimes you have all these feelings of like how hard it is to, become an entrepreneur, or just sometimes just maybe get that better job that you're looking for, or whatever it is. I think that it's really interesting to listen to people that are very encouraging and shows you that actually the people that are now successful, they were not successful in one day and they were struggling as well. So there's always that switch in their careers, and it's not only about working hard, trying your best, and doing what is a passion for you. And I would definitely recommend him. And I also love the Shark Tank. I used to watch the episodes a lot and see what entrepreneurs do, how people is so creative with so many random things that it surprised me a lot and gives me, I guess, some hope for the new generations.
Yep. Yep. I love that answer, and I love that you chose Stephen Bartlett too. One of my favorite podcast episodes ever is an episode of Diary of a CEO where he interviewed Marcus Buckingham. Marcus Buckingham wrote a book called First Break All the Rules that was a really influential book for me when I first became a manager. Super interesting book, and that episode, if you go and have a look for it on Spotify or wherever to all of the audience, wherever you're listening to this podcast, go and have a look for Diary of a CEO and the episode with Marcus Buckingham. It is excellent. Okay, and obviously everybody can find you at Trust the Process, but where else can they find you if they wanted to come and talk to you, Anna?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always there. So just type in Anna Espina. My surname, I'm Spanish, obviously. You can you can clearly know this because of my accent. But yeah, they can find me there. I just talk about, mental health in the workspace, remote work, something that we obviously do here at Trust the Process. And it's important, to also, create not only like work, but like some relationships with the team members and do some things out of the day to day on like just work. And yeah, I love to talk about entrepreneurship, marketing, all that stuff. So they can follow me on LinkedIn and have a chat.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.